Hey guys, what is up? My name is Rednu, and in this video, we're going to be talking about my problem with Zenless Zone Zero 1.2 story. Now, I do have a React video for this, and I was thinking about putting that out, but I wanted to just go ahead and scrap that, make this video instead, in case anyone wanted to engage with this and discuss with this video specifically. So, what are my thoughts on 1.2 story? Now, it took me a while to come to this conclusion. At first, I did really enjoy 1.2. I did really enjoy 1.2 as a story and playing through it. And I thought that what the devs decided to do, which is the complete removal of TV mode from the story, I thought it was a case of them listening and, garnering that player feedback, and as well just respecting it and, fulfilling their wish in the best way possible. After a few streams, and if you've watched my streams, you know exactly what I'm going to be saying in this video, twitch.tv/rednu23, by the way, you'll know exactly what I'm going to say in this video and what my thoughts on 1.2 story are. And my thoughts about 1.2 story is it has nothing to do with the narrative, it has nothing to do with the cutscenes, it has nothing to do with the characters. What I don't like about 1.2 story is purely about the gameplay. And what I don't like is the complete removal of TV mode. So what do I not like about it? 1.2 story was disappointing because TV mode was ripped out. And I choose my words very carefully here in terms of like how to say that TV mode was removed. TV mode was ripped out because what happened is we got less of a game. There were some moments that were not very good because TV mode was removed from the game. And as well, I feel like some parts were added in to compensate for it where it just didn't feel good at all. So what am I talking about? Well, in order for me to explain to you, we had to hop into the game. So if we go to the game, right, we take a look at the HDD system, chapter 4 story. First of all, we only got 5 stages. We only had 5 stages for the entirety of story mode. And so I think this stage is going to be able to illustrate what I mean. So what you're going to see are these weird little nodes where you have to sort of stay in place and beat everyone else up. So now this is gated, and now you have to wait for these guys to explode, right? Sort of destroy themselves before you get to the next section. We have this one now. And so you have this section too, right? Where there's nothing here. And you're just walking through here and to this combat stage, kind of awkwardly, right? And it's these little in-between segments that feel like they were added in to make up for the lack of TV mode, to create a sense of progression from combat to combat, and to present things in this stage way. But there's not really a lot here that, honestly, I feel like anyone should care about. And the open world exploration of these areas, right? They're not open world. I mean, the exploration of these areas are very, very limited, right? You have so many props, so many things sort of gating you, right? And keeping you in the lane that it makes it feel very, awkward. And I'm going to talk over this segment because I forgot to mention it, but I feel like a lot of people will say, well, this looks like Simulated Universe in Honkai Star Rail. You're walking between stages like Honkai Star Rail. And in reality, no, you're not. Because what does Honkai Star Rail have in comparison to Zenless Zone Zero? Well, each character has their own overworld ability. Especially with the recent ones, like with Fei Xiao, she runs around with the tornado. Firefly, I think she blows people up in the overworld. There are a lot of ways you move and maneuver between the stages that are creative and different between each character, and they have very specific effects on the combat that involve player input. When you are just walking in between from combat to combat, all you're doing is walking, and the way Jane Doe walks compared to someone like Caesar, there is no difference. So this is what I mean in terms of what is removed and what didn't get put in. what you see is a lot of what makes Zenless Zone Zero boring, and not what makes Zenless Zone Zero feel fun or unique. And sorry, I know there's a difference between how Jane Doe walks and Caesar walks, but in this combat stage, you literally cannot walk, so you're just running through each combat. And like, don't get me wrong, the environments and everywhere are very pretty. They're very, very cool to look at. I think the environments team did a very good job, actually. But I just don't think that this is a valid replacement. And here, put yourself in the perspective of someone playing through this for the very first time. Chances are you're not listening to what the dialogue is in the background. You're not listening to Lighter, Belle, Bernice, any of the banter that's going on. And so you're missing a lot of that character interaction. And so if you're playing through this for the very first time, what you're not doing is really paying attention to what the character is saying. Not only are there so many sound effects, you can clear the fight very easily. This is hard mode, by the way, before all the dialogue is even dispersed. So you don't even get to hear a lot of what Bellum says. You don't even get to hear a lot of what Lighter says too. And so you miss out on a lot of the character dialogue, the interactions, and the banter, right? And I think that's a big part of Zenless Zone Zero specifically, because what did Chapter 1 do? Chapter 1 introduced you to Nekomata, who joined the Cunning Hares, right? Chapter 2 introduced you to the Bellabog Heavy Industries. Chapter 3 introduced you to Victoria Housekeeping Company. Chapter 2 Intermission introduced you to Zhuyan and Qingyi. So like, there are so many character introductions, and it is all about showcasing these characters and presenting to you that they're a team and that they talk with each other. They have their enemies like Bellum and Pulchra. I really value that quite highly, and I feel like with the lack of TV mode, you get a lot less of that. Not only do you breeze through the combat stages way too quickly to hear any of the banter, the interactions, but you take away a lot of what makes Zenless Zone Zero so special. I also think you have a lot less creative expression. So if I go over here and I hit this explore mode, the TV mode that we did get from 1.2 as a patch is not in the story, but rather it's in these stages. And look at this. Look at this Bang Boo. Look at Eos. He's riding a motorbike. And what you're doing here is going through this sort of racetrack almost and taking these like lightning power-ups and just zipping through. Right? I would have loved to see this in the final stage of 1.2's story. Just going through all of this and trying to, the player wants to go through as fast as possible, right? Just to illustrate this idea that they're a part of this race. They're a part of Tour de Inferno, right? And so you go through that, right? You're going to collect all these coins, and it's the idea, like, even though you don't have to play through this very quickly, the idea is that playing through it quickly is very fun, right? So, like, this is a fun stage, and I would have loved to see that, some of that anyway, in the Tour de Inferno. As well, the racing stage too. Like, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't want, like, the bike racing stage to be removed from Zenless, but I felt like this could have had its place there too. And you have this one as well. This is another sort of stage for the TV mode that used unique assets for TV mode, like these desert tiles, right? And also these rock tiles, which previously, right, you weren't able to interact with at all. And we can see that there's optimizations for TV mode already with this fast forward system. They've had this before, but it's a lot less awkward now with the weird pauses in between. But I can go through these blocks, right? And even though it's not much, like, this is another set of gameplay and another way for the writers to creatively express faith in Bell and Wise's role in the story. And that's really what is missing, is Bell and Wise's role in the story. Now, 1.2 kicks off the story, kicks off this chapter by throwing Billy and Bell, or whoever you pick, probably Wise, into a hollow, right? They drive the truck off the cliff into a hollow. And so what you're missing is this depth of expression. What I mean by that is that in the stage where Bell and Wise are thrown into a hollow, they don't have access to HDD, they don't have EOS deployed. This is a perfect stage to have this sort of combat to combat stage setup where you don't have the TV mode. Because what is missing? Well, Bell and Wise are not interacting with HDD. They are not interacting with EOS. They do not have a bird's eye view of all things. But with everything else following that, where they do get the HDD system set up and they are able to provide support as a proxy to the Hollow Raiders, that is the depth of expression you're missing. You're not seeing things through their eyes anymore. You only walk around as Caesar and you see EOS kind of follow your tracks and you hear the banter, but again, you can't really pay attention to the banter because you're too focused on the combat that is happening in front of you. Now, I also want to illustrate a difference, right? Now, you might be wondering, why didn't you complain about this in 1.1? Why didn't you say anything about 1.1? Well, it's because 1.1 is completely different. 1.1 is completely different from 1.2. And why is it? Well, if you go to the video archive, right, you see, first of all, there's 4 sections: Asian stories, Faith in story, and a special episode. Special episode is what we got for 1.1 as far as what the story is. It was a filler patch. It was a filler story. It's how I think of Zenless Zone Zero. What it's going to be is 1.0 main story beat. 1.1 is going to be filler. 1.2 another main story beat. 1.3, guess what it's going to be? Probably another special episode. Probably another filler sort of episode, an intermission, before we get 1.4 where everything sort of comes together. And I'm highly anticipating that to involve Miyabi and Section 6 and Hollow Zero, a huge, huge story chapter. So, back to my point, right? 1.1 special episode. Why is this different? Well, it's because you're not following Faithin's story. Bell and Wise, Faithin, they have no involvement in this story whatsoever. And so you're playing as Jane Doe. You have nothing to do with Faithin, Bell, and Wise, and so there's no HDD system, there is no TV mode. That's why 1.1 felt very good. It's because when you're playing as Jane Doe, you are interacting with the world as Jane Doe. Versus when you're playing through 1.2 story, yeah, you do have the trial characters, right? If I go to story mode, I go to easy over here. If I go to the first stage, right? That is the first stage. It's reordered because I didn't collect all the boxes. But you're playing through Billy, right? You're playing through this stage as Bernice. You're playing through this stage as Caesar. But you're not really playing through the story as these characters. Because what happens in between the stage? You go back to controlling Bell. You go back to interacting with the NPCs as Bell. This is Faithin's story. This isn't Caesar's story. Faithin is being introduced to Caesar and the Sons of Caledon, but that's it. Everything else comes back to Faithin, to Bell and Wise. And Bell and Wise are some of the best contributions to gacha gaming as a genre, because they're their own fleshed out characters. They're not a self-insert power fantasy wish fulfillment bullshit like Rover is. Sorry, I had to throw it in, right? Or most, not even WUA in general, but a lot of gacha games are like that, where the main character is just the self-insert for you as the player, and you have this crazy godly influence over the narrative and the story as a whole. Bell and Wise are weak. They are neats. They are just the support. They are very, very much incapable of doing anything on their own, but at the same time, they are invaluable to the success and the survival of the Hollow Raiders because they are the navigators, right? They provide invaluable support to them. They have their own role. And what I got with the story of 1.2 was a heavily muted and diminished sort of involvement from Faithin. It felt very awkward just cutting from Caesar, Bernice, mainly walking through the stages as them and going back to Faithin, right? And this sort of jump between perspectives did not feel very organic at all. It felt very disjointed, and it felt like Bell and Wise were much less of a character because you didn't get to hear a lot of the banter from Bell and Wise or Fairy for the matter either. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on Zenless Zone Zero 1.2. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care, peace, and bye.